Step outside, take a look up, and there's a good chance you'll spot a plane overhead.
Yeah, it's no secret Alaska has a love affair with flying, one born out of necessity. In this week's Storytime with Ann Phil, author Laurel Downing-Bill shows us how Alaska first took flight.
What better place to prove our point than Lake Hood, the busiest seaplane base in the world?
But that's only part of the equation. You see, overall, Alaska has 6 times as many pilots and 16 times as many planes per capita than any other state in the nation. And Laurel, it all began 100 years ago.
Well, I was doing my research for Alaska's aviation history. I learned that the first craft that went into the air happened on July 4th, 1899. That's when Juneau residents were treated to the spectacle of a Professor Leonard who ascended 1,000 feet in a hot air balloon of his design. But after Orville and Wilbur Wright had their successful, controlled, sustained, and powered flight in 1903, Alaskans' imaginations took flight too. A fellow by the name of Henry Peterson ordered a kit and a motor from outside and had them shipped to Nome, where he built the very first airplane in Alaska in this big warehouse. Well, on May the 9th, he towed his Blériot monoplane out into an open field and attempted to get it into the air, but the plane never left the ground.
So when did the first aircraft actually take flight?
That would be in 1913, when Fairbanks promoters Arthur Williams, who owned the Arcade Cafe, and an R.S. McDonald brought an aviator whose name was James V. Martin north for a big air show. These guys thought they could make a ton of money if they had the first air show in Alaska. And so Martin and his wife Lily, who was also an aviatrix, crated up their Gage Martin biplane and put it on board the steamer in Seattle, and they went up to Skagway, where they then transferred themselves and their cargo onto the narrow gauge White Pass Yukon Railroad, went up to Whitehorse. Then they had to load themselves and their plane onto a boat. They wound their way down the Yukon River to Tanana, and then onto the Chena, and then up the Chena Slough, and arrived in Fairbanks on June the 21st. And well, they were putting their airplane back together and sharing information about airplanes as well with anybody who was interested. Then the promoters were selling tickets for this grand air show. They were going for $2.50 for adults, $1 for children under 6, which in today's money would have been about $62.50 and $25.
What happened to the airplane that took that first flight?
Well, Martin offered it for sale to anybody who was willing to pay the price, but with nobody knowing how to fly, he didn't have any takers. So he ended up disassembling the plane and shipping it back to the lower 48. And then the next big event that involved airplanes didn't happen until 1920 with the Black Wolf Squadron. But that's another story for another Aunt Phil segment.
Can't believe that was over 100 years ago. A
Yeah.
lot has changed in aviation, but it's still pretty amazing that technology was.
Yeah, it is. Quite a
and
long
going.
journey. A lot of work put into that.
Yeah. Well, next week in Storytime with Aunt Phil, it's all about President Harding and the 2 mysteries that surrounded his trip to Alaska when he visited for a week in 1923.